Yeah, I may not be able to do this. Oh well,
It's fun to think about, though.
it is. Although you know what, like it is fun to think about it. Though at some level, thinking about how ridiculous can I make my trip is a pretty stupid way to plan.
Too low. Terrain.
You're listening to Dots, Lines, and Destinations, a travel podcast with hosts Stephen Seagraves, Fosma Moon, and Seth Miller. Yeah, so this dot, Las Vegas for Norwegian, they're saying we're not going to be able to do it in the summer because of the heat issues. And so what are they going to do, Norwegian Airlines, what are they going to do about this? Are they going to reduce capacity? It doesn't seem
No,
like
they're suspending the route.
They're just saying we can't make it work, so we're just not going to fly it.
Yeah, I mean, so there's performance challenges, hot and high, yada yada yada. We've talked about, or we understand that those challenges exist. The interesting thing about the temperatures is, like, if you go to the Middle East, the temperatures are roughly the same, but Vegas has a couple thousand feet elevation that most folks don't think about, and I think that's really where the challenge comes in.
Mm-hmm.
Plus the fact that Norwegian puts 30 to 60 extra seats relative to most other airlines on their 787-8. So it's a lot more people. That's a lot more. The seats weigh stuff. The people weigh stuff. Their bags weigh. All that weight adds up. But here's a question for you: why not just fly later?
Yeah, like wait till it gets cool.
And I guess part of that is days are long in the summer. So like how late do you have to wait? Is it like a 10 p.m. or 11 p.m. departure? And does that completely throw off all the aircraft utilization?
Mm-hmm.
And right, does that not get back to London early enough for people to be able to land and go straight to work kind of thing?
Yeah. I mean,
it's not just London, right? It's 4 cities, but trying to figure out, like, why don't they just fly later, since that's what the other airlines do. Like, you go to Egypt or the Middle East, like, a lot of the long haul flights just depart in the middle of the night.
Yeah. Yep.
And people have learned that that's what it takes to fly here. And I guess not competitive with the other options, maybe, but in a lot of the cases, Norwegian's the only nonstop. So how non-competitive could it be?
Yeah, are they only gonna suspend it for the season, for like summer, and then bring it back in the winter?
Yeah, they claim it's seasonal suspension for summer 2017, and that I think the quote we got from the official, spokesman was, and we're going to have a new solution in place for 2018. And it's unclear if that just is different flight times, like flying later in the day, if they're somehow going to block seats to make it lighter loads. I don't know, but we've talked about this before. They're running 95% load factors on long haul routes. That's ridiculous.
Yeah. And to restrict restrict seats on the flight would be, I mean, it's basically going against their whole modus operandi, which is to pack the planes and undercut the competition.
Yeah, drive the per passenger cost down as absolutely low as possible by packing as many people on board.
Yeah, exactly. So I wonder, I mean, unless Las Vegas has a plan to extend the runway by 5,000 feet, which I haven't seen, but yeah, I wonder if they could just move the flight times to, say, I mean, it does get dark in the summer later, so...
Yeah, but does it get, it's part of it's getting dark and part of it's actually cooling off.
Yeah, how quickly does it cool off in Las Vegas? And I think the altitude's really the bigger issue because of thinner air. So, wow. That stinks for everybody that's in Las Vegas wanting to fly nonstop to what? Gatwick, and they fly to
Copenhagen, Oslo, and they just added a fourth.
Was it Stockholm?
Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, 3. And I mean, who knows if Barcelona or right? They just started up a Barcelona base. They've got a Paris base now. There's been rumors of either Rome or I want to say somewhere else. There've been a few rumored of other base, potentially Lisbon. I mean, there's been talk. They've got like 40 more 787s on order. They got to put them somewhere.
Yeah.
And it seems like Transatlantic is doing way better for them than the theoretical flights to Bangkok and Chiang Mai or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, we were kind of talking about this earlier today, that it seems like Asia is not doing as well as people thought, and maybe, that's having an impact on these low-cost carriers just like Norwegian.
Yeah, I mean, Asia, the big flood of capacity there is from China, is the Chinese carriers flying to the United States, I think. I think less of
Yeah.
that's going to Europe right now.
Hmm.
Although there's some, I mean, British Airways slash Chengdu,
Yeah.
right?
And you have other carriers in like Shenzhen Airlines, you have Chengdu Airlines, you have what is it, Sichuan. They're all starting up. Hainan.
Wasn't like Donghai just got 5 787s on order
Yeah.
or something like that, right? I mean,
Yeah.
we're seeing orders. We recognize the planes, but not the airlines at this point.
Yeah. And it
Companies
goes
you've
back
never
to
heard of, and they get a half dozen birds, and they can fly a couple flights a week to somewhere random in the United States. Like from tertiary cities, there's no limits in terms of route frequencies or anything like that, so they can do it. Connect to some 737s down there and flow into wherever in Southeast Asia.
Yeah.
And the transit without visa thing is mostly functional in China these days.
Yeah, it's an easy way to connect on. You can see the city for the day or two that you land in and continue on. Yeah, I mean, makes a lot of sense, but it's hurting. I think it's hurting U.S. carriers for sure. But I wonder how much impact that's having on Norwegian, just because like what you're seeing into Thailand or maybe those markets are just weak to begin with.
Yeah, well, I think those markets were weak to begin with, and it'll be interesting to see just what the impact is on like the U.S. carriers and the other Asian carriers. I mean, for the United ANA joint venture or the American JAL joint venture, I'm not entirely sure it's going to completely destroy them just from a total coverage level and sort of where everything can be. But I would say it impacted. I'm not sure it's going to really destroy it though.
Yeah, that makes sense. Makes a lot of sense.
On the plus side, my one-way ticket home from China is $340.
That's it works in your benefit, right?
Yeah, I mean, that was more or less a walk-up fare. I'd have to check to see if it's still available, but there's some stupid cheap fares out of Beijing and Shanghai and that's to the northeast. Like that's not even LA or Seattle. Seattle, I think, is at this point the cheapest in general, but Boston, New York, Los Angeles are all also very cheap.
Yeah.
Yeah. Crazy.
Our two lines are Cologne to Seattle on Eurowings and Dublin, Miami on Aer Lingus.
Don't forget the third line. We added a third.
Oh, we added a third?
San Diego to JFK.
Oh, San Diego to JFK, which isn't really a new line. I mean, it's
a line.
It's a new line. Yeah, it's a line. It's not a new one, but
yeah, fair enough.
The Cologne Seattle on Eurowings is probably the most interesting to me.
That's just because you live out there.
Yeah, but I think it's interesting because it's weird. I mean, Cologne has suffered in the last. I mean, we've seen United pulled their service from Cologne. Lufthansa pulled a flight. Like I think they flew Cologne to Chicago at one point. American's flight out of Cologne wasn't doing very well, and so now you have Eurowings.
Lufthansa was the Dusseldorf, Chicago, and Dusseldorf, Newark. I think.
Is that what it was? Okay.
Yeah, the 343. I took the Newark flight once.
And the Newark flight still exists, and it's a 346 every now and then.
Wow.
But Cologne's always kind of seemed like, I mean, it's definitely like a very leisure market because of it's touristy, because of the Dom Cathedral and just the city in general. It's a lot of Rhine cruises and stuff up and down there.
Yeah.
So, it's interesting to me that it's going to Seattle. I mean, it makes sense because I think Seattle it's kind of a touristy destination as well. But I don't know. I was looking up Eurowings. I'm like, this looks like the most miserable experience. I mean, this looks worse than Condor, which is saying a lot. So.
Yeah. Hey, listen, low cost carrier or LCC. We can mix words in.
Yeah.
Acronyms at whim, it seems. Hey, low cost carriers. They offer you exactly what you're getting.
Yeah, and I think people eat it up. Condor's done really well.
Yeah, isn't Condor now part of the Thomas Cook group?
I think so. Yeah, and they've expanded. I mean, they're now flying
massive expansion.
They're flying. I think they're flying Portland. They're flying Seattle. I think they're starting Calgary. They're doing a lot of things kind of to the west of the Rockies. That's interesting, and they're doing quite well. And I don't know if that's just like the mentality, like the West Coast, kind of like the leisure thing, and people just being, frugal or what. But they seem to be doing really well.
Yeah, I mean, I actually got to talk to the Thomas Cook guys over the summer and just sort of see where their expansion's going and whatnot. And they've converted from being a package tour operator to a scheduled services operator very quickly and very successfully. It's an impressive shift.
Yeah, absolutely. And then Dublin, Miami.
Just another Aer Lingus route.
Yeah, I don't find it super interesting. It's cool.
Well, it's like Aer Lingus is expecting like another double-digit capacity growth into North America next summer versus this past summer. And some of that is a couple new routes, like I think Hartford launched just a couple months ago, so technically it wasn't in the summer season, things like that. But they're massively expanding, and part of that, I think IAG is wanting to shift more and more connecting flow out of London and over to Dublin, where it can. Yeah. Right? I mean, if you own both of them, Dublin's a way better connecting experience in terms of passenger flow, as long as you're not talking the Middle East. If you've got to get people out of Europe into North America, you do that and you leave London for the O&D traffic. It's sort of like American has Philadelphia and JFK. They leave JFK for O&D and they move connecting flow over via Philadelphia. Yeah. Or United does the same thing with Newark versus Dulles or Newark versus Chicago. Yeah. New York City O&D, London O&Ds. You can always drive a premium revenue. Grab it where you can.
Yeah, makes sense.
But yeah, no, Aer Lingus is supposed to significantly increase volume, and if One World buys in, they're supposed to join One World at some point next year, I think.
Wow.
Interesting. Weren't they in One World at one point?
I think so. Well, I wonder what this does then to like the United kind of...
The bilateral there?
Yeah, the little agreement there. I have to think it goes away.
I would think it goes away at some point, no matter what, because I will say it's always fun for me to walk through JFK T5, which is the JetBlue terminal, but that also has Aer Lingus, and now it actually has TAP Air Portugal in it, and to see random Star Alliance or the United logo on the departures board in a JetBlue terminal.
Yeah, because they
have code share on the Aer Lingus flights.
Yeah, And do you think then that could be possibly why United's moved a 767-400ER to Dublin out of Newark?
As opposed to the 7.5?
Yeah, I mean, you got more capacity now.
Yeah, maybe. Obviously, is it a 400 or a 300? I thought they were moving the 300s to Newark and the 400s to Dulles.
They are. Right now, though, it's a 400ER.
Okay.
Last night, I looked at it last night because I was kind of interested to see how much lift there was, and it was full.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Interesting. So, everybody going for Guinness and turkey?
I guess. Not enough tryptophan to go around.
Turkey and Jameson's? I don't know. What's the right mix?
I need some turkey and an Irish coffee or something.
Yes. Pick you right back up.
Pick me right back up. Yeah. So I think that's an interesting point though that you make about like Dublin being this like connecting hub, because like Heathrow seems like it's very choked at this point.
Yeah, and it's going to stay a mess for however long it takes them to build the third runway, assuming you believe that's actually going to happen.
Exactly. That's kind of where I was going, was if that third runway never gets built, then you definitely have a capacity choke there. And Dublin makes sense for people that are just connecting onward into Europe. Hey, let's just put them through Dublin. And Aer Lingus' business product is pretty nice on the A330s. I haven't seen what they've done to the 757s. I assume it's probably not lie flat, or if it is, it's like the United flight, like United seat. Delta seat on the 752s. But
their 330s are really nice.
Yeah, the 330s look great. It looks like, it's the same product that Finnair uses, I believe. So that staggered throne seating.
Yeah, the one weird thing about the Aer Lingus, and I did it in June, coming home from the IATA meeting, they flew me home, and it was an awesome product, but there's like 6 different seats depending on which seat assignment you get.
Oh,
you have a single or a double. You can have the middle pair or the window pair, so you may have to crawl over someone or you may not. And then beyond that, like some have a shoe drawer in the side and some don't. And like there's all sorts of weird little quirks about them. So that's one where it really if you care enough, it really matters which seat assignment you get.
Yeah.
Since they gave me a free seat, I took what I was given and smiled. But
yeah, makes sense.
And I mean, it was fine either way. I also was on the daytime flight, so it didn't really matter at all. But
and Dublin Miami seems like, it's kind of a leisure route, probably for Irish passengers, right, or even English passengers coming just for a holiday to Miami.
And I think it's also just connecting North American, either Latin America with American
Mhm.
or North American, sort of South Florida folks into Europe in general.
Yeah. Yeah. Makes a lot of sense.
The flip side of that is we keep hearing all the majors talk about how there's massive overcapacity on the transatlantic markets and how they're all trimming back a couple points here and there, and then you get Norwegian growing massively. Now you got Aer Lingus growing significantly.
Yeah.
Does this destroy the sort of point-to-point service or the sort of many secondary city service that United has built up over all the years? That Delta seems to sort of have a different version of that out of JFK, right? Delta's had Pisa and Marseille and random town, Nice, like all those sorts of smaller towns in Europe and France. Does this destroy some of that because the connecting flow is just too much cheaper?
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, it's the same question. We talked about British Airways starting their service to Oakland. It's more lift between Europe and the U.S. And does that idea of, is there too much capacity on the transatlantic flights? It kind of seems like we're just being told one thing by the airlines, like, oh, we got to cut back there, but that's not really what the story is, because it seems like there is a demand there for it.
Well, they're not. Not only are they not cutting back, British Airways is doing it. They're now, I think, between when we recorded that episode and now they've announced that they're going to add a shit ton of seats going 10 abreast on the 777s.
A high capacity 777 that they're going to bring in.
Yeah. Well, I mean, all the 777s are going 10 abreast, so we're all screwed. But I was annoyed. I looked at a KLM seat map and I was like, ooh, still not abreast on the 777. I'm booking that. And then it was actually 10 abreast.
Yeah.
So I'm pissed. But there's some interesting challenges there. The transatlantic market, I think in the last couple of days we've seen some very, very aggressive pricing.
Yep.
We're recording this on Tuesday, and right now we're in the midst of some lovely $400 round trips originating in the United States for coach, some of which are upgradable even. I've been booking $600 round trips from originating in Europe in premium economy. I've booked, $1,000 to $1,200 business class originating in Europe a few times in the last year, and that's separate from the $500 mistake fares.
Yep.
Kind of thing. I just feel like as a consumer, it's sort of the glory days that we've got access to all these cheap seats, and that's completely separate from the Asia conversation we were having to begin this section.
Yeah, definitely.
I feel like that the capacity is working, even with all the consolidation. The growth in capacity is working in the favor of the consumer in some ways.
In some ways, yeah, I think you're right. I think we're getting told one thing by the airlines, though, especially the U.S.-based airlines, because I think it's so they can paint a picture of, oh, we're not growing there because we're focused on profitability, or we're focused on
subsidies.
Subsidies. And yeah, it's all subsidies or PRASM. The PRASM numbers are messed up because of subsidies, and so I think people need to be aware that there is a capacity growth and there are deals still out there, and I think cheap fares are around to stay for the foreseeable future, unless fuel just completely blows up. You see what I did there? Unless fuel completely just goes up again and we're back to $150 barrel oil, which I don't know if that'll happen, but it could.
Yeah, it's challenging.
Yeah. Last line, San Diego JFK on Delta and even on JetBlue and Alaska, right? Because Alaska started San Diego, Newark. Delta now has kind of entered this Mint competition with JetBlue and are putting lie flats on San Diego JFK, JFK to what was the other one? Can't remember. Oh, Boston to San Diego.
Yeah.
And Boston, San Francisco, which is kind of crazy to me that they're really going to try to duke it out with JetBlue on these routes. I don't know.
Again, as the consumer, these are at the low end. If you can catch the cheap seats, it's a great price for a luxury transcon experience.
Yeah.
400, I think, is the San Diego price point. Starting point 600 or so to New York. For LA and San Francisco. We'll see what Seattle comes in at and Vegas. But there's some crazy cheap options on some of these if you can find the inventory. And even if you can't, like the high price version isn't that bad if you've got, if you're allowed that on your expense account anyways.
Yeah, I mean, I think like that's the kind of the key is the prices for Mint on these transcon routes isn't exorbitant, even on the higher ends. Delta, I have to see kind of what they're doing. I haven't seen anything yet on like what they're going to price it at. I would have to assume that their low end price they're trying to go after JetBlue, so they'll match it, at least come close. I don't know.
It's going to be interesting, and they've got to come close on price, and their cost basis is just that much higher.
Yeah. And it brings up a point about, we talked about them doing their premium service, the Delta One, on Seattle JFK back when it was, when they were really hyping Seattle as this new West Coast hub, and they were going to put premium service on that route because they felt it was a premium service route. And then it didn't last. It lasted all of a month.
No, it lasted a little longer than that, but it was very quietly drawn back.
Yeah, like they really, and I think they now,
but yeah.
They only have one flight a day now that has the premium, the Delta One cabin on it, and it's like middle of the day. So, I guess that's okay. I mean, for me, where that really matters is a transcon or an early morning flight. Yeah. So,
can I offer? We need a new dot. We got to go back. I'm sorry.
Okay.
We're adding Minneapolis to the list.
Oh gosh, why?
It just won an award for America's best airport restroom.
I think it's all because of that guy's article. Remember?
I forgot we talked about that so long ago.
We had that show, and it was like I read that I posted that article.
Oh my god, I forgot about that episode. I was just thinking Larry Craig. Right?
Yeah, it's true.
Like, how do you give Minneapolis an award for bathrooms and not immediately think of that? I completely forgot. Yours is a great one. Your version is great too. Anyways, okay, back to our regularly scheduled show.
We'll have to put that link back in there. I found it in the Slack channel, so we'll have to put the link back in the show notes for reference. So destination-wise, I think this is kind of hilarious, being originally from Houston. Air New Zealand, we're going to make the destination Houston. Air New Zealand, in their magazine, like their onboard travel magazine, published a photo of Houston, kind of like touting it up. But if you look closely at the photo, where it's taken and when it's taken, it was during a flood in Houston, and so it's a bayou that you're looking at. It's not a river. There's no rivers in Houston. It's a bayou that's overflowing its banks. I had to laugh because they probably didn't know. They probably just took a stock photo and were like, "Oh, look, it's a river in Houston."
Yeah, that's a little awkward.
And everyone in Houston noticed. So this got posted like to Reddit. It made it onto the Houston Chronicle, like the big paper in Houston.
Nice.
So just a funny aside for our listeners.
To be fair, Houston is mostly a festering swamp, right?
That's how I like to think of it.
Okay. You don't like thinking about it that way, or just accept that it is?
I accept it. It.
Okay.
Yeah, and we'll post the image in the show notes or a link to the image. And if you look at it, it's like there's a freeway running there. Like none of that water should be there. Like you shouldn't see any of that water. Yeah. So, oh man, good times.
Yeah. Before we continue with the rest of our show, I want to take a quick break and throw to a good friend of ours, Eric Paquette from Abroaders. And we spoke with him, you and I did, Stephen, a few days ago about a charity effort that they're running, sort of home for the holidays kind of thing. So it's a mini episode within an episode, but let's take a listen real quick.
Welcome to a special edition of Dots, Lines, and Destinations. We have with us Eric Paquette from Abroaders, who is here with a charitable opportunity for our listeners, and something that we wanted to partake in as a podcast, and he asked us to do that. And so welcome to the show, Eric.
Hey, thank you very much for having me.
Tell us a little bit about what you are doing at Abroaders, and then a little bit about the organization and what you're on the show for.
Sure. So the project that we started is to help folks get home for the holidays. And so this is an idea that was not ours at all originally. A guy named Peter Shankman, who's a New York-based PR professional and an author, he flies all the time, and he had this idea to donate some of his own miles to help other folks get to where they should be for the holidays, which is home with family. And so I talked about this with Peter somewhat recently. And the first time around, he just donated some of his own miles and was able to get help 4 people fly home to be with their families. And the next year, the project got picked up by a bunch of major news organizations. Even JetBlue ended up donating some flights. And so this year, my company, Abroaders, has gotten involved to help raise donations for miles. We help people earn and redeem frequent flyer miles. So we've got a lot of expertise on the side of redeeming flights. And we just wanted to help. We're very close with the folks at Award Wallet as well. And they're supporting the project also. And so, we just wanted to try and reach out to folks in the points and miles community and see if we could get some folks to donate some miles to help other folks that are a little less fortunate be able to get home for the holidays.
So where can folks go to donate their miles if they'd like to participate?
Yeah, so we set up a page at abroaders.com/give. And it's super easy. All we're asking is just your contact information and the type of points that you'd be willing to donate. And then somebody from Abroaders will follow up with you just to make sure we go through all the steps. It should be very, very easy for folks that are contributing. That was one of the reasons we got involved because in the past they had kind of relied on donors to sort of do some of the work of helping to work with the winners and organize the flights. And so we're going to be taking care of all that. So if you're willing to donate, all you do is just fill out a really short form, and then we'll reach out and contact you. We'll get your permission and the access to be able to redeem the miles that you're donating from your account and help somebody get a flight.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm dad. Hi, I have words. This is sad. They work sometimes. Sorry about that. It's part of me says I should cut this part out. The reality is I'm too lazy to even bother. I think this is a really interesting thing that you guys are doing and really exciting. Sort of great opportunity. Do you have an idea of what you expect the participation to be? I mean, how many trips are you guys prepared to find bookings for?
Well, so far, the page actually just launched a couple of days ago, and we've already got over 100,000 miles that have been donated. So I'm really optimistic that this is going to go really well. Award Wallet had said that they're going to send out a message to their users as well. And as you guys probably know, there's a ton of folks that use Award Wallet to track their points and miles. So we're really optimistic that this could have some pretty high potential, somewhere in the 20 to 30 flights. But it just kind of depends on how many folks are able to give up some miles to help the cause.
Nice. And is there? I mean, how do you pick who gets them?
Yeah, that's a great question. So Peter actually has a really good relationship with the folks at Imager, which is a big photo sharing website. And so they've generously offered to host the competition to select people who are going to win to go home for the holidays. So I'm not 100% sure exactly how the entry process is going to work, but it's certainly going to involve just sort of telling your story. And I can tell for sure that there have been some really amazing stories in the past, that just it feels so good to be a part of this. I watched one of the winners from a past year on CNN that was talking about it was a husband and wife. The husband was on active duty in the military, and it had been like 3 years since they had spent Christmas together. So there's just, I know there's tons of situations like that out there. So the main idea is just going to be to share your story, and then the folks that use the Imager website are going to actually vote on the winners. And the other thing that I should mention is that we're going to select the minimum number of winners that we know for sure. We've got enough miles, we can give flights away to this many people. But we're going to continue to keep the donations page open throughout the contest. And if it turns out that we have more miles left over, we're going to do everything we can at Abroaders to just pick other people that we know we can get flights. And as you guys, I'm sure, are aware, there can be some challenges with matching up availability, especially around the holidays. So that's where we're hoping to contribute as much as possible to just sort of use our expertise of the frequent flyer programs and transferable currencies, especially to move things around and get things organized so that we can maximize the number of folks that we can help.
So basically what you're saying is that how many people get to go home for the holidays depends entirely on how good you are.
Depends a little bit on how good we are, and a lot more on how generous people are. There's always a little room to squeeze. A lot of the fights in the past, it's been domestic only, and so I think what we're going to do is we're going to see if there's folks that have an international trip that we can make work there. We're going to try and do that as well with any extra miles that we have left over. But yeah, it's a struggle. I think the biggest win is if we can get this to be sort of big, and I think there's a really big potential for this to get picked up by some of the major news organizations. That's when it puts a bunch of pressure on the airlines to get involved. It's really easy to ignore these types of things if they're small, but when it starts getting picked up and lots of people are sharing it on social media and stuff, then I think in the past JetBlue just said, hey, we're gonna donate 10 flights, and I think that there's potential for the airlines to either donate flights or to maybe loosen up availability for the cause as well. So we're hoping we can put some pressure on those guys as well.
Well, as you're aware, Dotsons and Destinations is a major influencer in the travel and social media space. So
that's why I had to find you guys. Well, we definitely appreciate it. I'm a huge fan of this show.
Thanks. I say part of that statement was a lie. The happy to help part certainly is not that. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. Hope we can help make some. I guess one other question I have for you, if one of the challenges with making these donations, if I want to sort of donate 5,000 points, I can't redeem anything with 5,000 points. Have you guys gotten dispensation to help sort of combine them, or are you expecting people to donate up to, donate in increments that resemble full tickets?
Great question, man. Yeah, so we did. The limit, the minimum is 12,500.
Okay.
It's just typically a domestic one way. So yeah, I mean, there's a challenge with that all the time where you can't combine accounts, or at least not without paying huge fees. And so our goal is to just get the minimum amount for a one way, and I think that's going to help a lot, because I think in the past they sort of required people to donate at least 25 or 30,000 miles, which is a little bit bigger ask for lots of people unless you fly all the time. And so that was one of the contributions we wanted to make, is like, we know how this works well enough to be able to mix and match and grab, okay, this guy's got American miles donated, this guy's got United, we can get a one way with each of those programs and make this work for someone. So that's sort of our goal, is like minimum's 12,500. And, obviously if you can give more than that, that's a huge help. The more points we have, the more we can make an impact.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Eric. It's a great cause, and that URL again is abroaders.com/give, and our listeners can go there and donate.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. Huge fan of the show, and it's really an honor to be able to join you guys.
Awesome. Yeah, happy to do it.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Sweet.
Awesome. Yeah, if people want to donate, that's awesome. I think it's a cool cause.
Yeah, so, and like everything else, we will make sure there's links in the show notes so you know where to go and what you're looking for.
Yep, absolutely. Let's talk about United Basic Economy.
Back to the basics?
Back to the basics. So this was announced, I guess, last week?
Last week, yep.
Yeah. We're recording this on Tuesday. And there's some specifics about the fares and what they're going to do. The big thing that people are upset about is no carry-on bags for these basic economy fares.
I think it's split on what people are pissed about.
You think so? I know you had some deep discussions.
Yeah, that's one way to describe them.
On Twitter about kids and the seat selection.
That conversation.
Yeah.
The assigned seats is the other one. No assigned seats in advance. And what amazes me is the number of people who are convinced that is the beginning of the end of civilization. And not because, it's bad or it's inconvenient or any of that. I like having a seat assigned. I appreciate knowing where I'm going to sit on board because I like window seats. Being able to do that in advance is nice. I'm, in fact, more than I should probably willing to pay for that. But the flip side of that is when, there's so many airlines that don't allow advanced seat assignment without paying.
Yep.
To suddenly say United is the devil incarnate because they're doing this just seems disingenuous to me.
Yeah, and I mean, Delta does the exact same thing, and no one seemed to care then.
But I think it was probably a similar level of, no, let me rephrase that. People noticed. It was far from a similar level of outrage and hate. And it sucks being United, I think, is part of the problem, right? People love to hate United. People love to hate on Polaris, even though it's going to be direct aisle access, flatbed, yada, 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 yada. I mean, maybe it'll be great, maybe it won't. We don't know for another couple weeks until it really starts flying.
Yeah.
But people have seen the seats. People have been in the seats. It's not going to be the best product out there. It's certainly not going to be the worst. And to listen and read some of the reviews of a product that doesn't exist yet, you'd think it was an absolute disaster. And I think we're getting a lot of that on basic economy as well.
Yeah, and I think we should probably just state the fact of the fares up front. Like, so no seat selection, no
carry-on bag unless you have status.
Unless you have status,
no credit
card. There won't be any PQMs,
right.
PQDs.
No elite qualification of any sort.
Yeah, no elite qualification on these fares. What was the other big thing?
Group 5 boarding.
Yeah, Group 5 boarding and no buy-ups, really. Like, no, there's not going to be any offer to buy up.
So my take on the Group 5 boarding thing, thank God. Like, if I don't have a carry-on bag anyways, why would I want to get on the plane early? If I don't have a carry-on bag and I don't need space, I want to be the last person on board. I want to be walking down the jet bridge with the flight attendant in the final manifest.
Yep.
Not the flight attendant, the gate agent.
Yep.
They hand it to the flight attendant, right, or the pilot. I want to be the last guy on board because I don't need to spend more time in a 17-inch wide by 30-inch deep space.
Yeah, in a middle seat, in the middle,
no less. Yeah, right. I'm not doing that because I necessarily love being in that cramped space. I'm doing it because I like being on airplanes, and I like going places. I don't need that for if I don't have to get my bag on board. Why would you want to spend extra time on the plane?
Well, and I think there's this like misconception that this is going to be the base. This is going to be what economy fares become, and I think that's the wrong idea. Like, this is not going to become United's new base fare. Like, that's.
Well, I hope so. I think you're
I
probably
do too.
Right.
Yeah.
The caveat to that is, if you look at the way United has implemented their buy-ups right now, it's an interesting sort of tiered, and someone's got a thread on Flyer Talk. I'll see if I can remember to find it and throw it in the show notes, that basically identifies what the standard fare is and then what the buy-up is, and there's basically differentials. So it's like depending on the market, $79.99, $129 differential to buy up to first class in a lot of cases, and that's sort of the Q up, Y up, G up, whatever, those up fares.
Yep. But
they're not as random as they looked, I think is the short answer. And so they track against what the available coach fare is. And it's not impossible to believe, and we don't know what United's going to do, but it's not impossible to believe that United's going to do a similar negative differential for basic economy. And so if it's a K fare, you get a K down.
Yeah.
Right, that books into G or N, which are typically the lowest/sale fare buckets that United has today.
Yep.
And those will be inventory restricted too, but it'll be whatever the K fare is minus 20 or 40 or whatever whatever the number is.
It has to be more than the check bag fare, or it doesn't make any sense, right?
Well, unless you're not checking a bag.
Well, that's true. I do have a friend that likes to stuff all his stuff in a backpack. I mean, that's clearly possible.
You have a few. I do that all the time. I've got that klepto jacket, something like a Scotty vest jacket.
Those things are going to sell like hotcakes when these fares come out.
Yeah, at this point, I have to assume we're going into Thanksgiving season. He's going to have some great sales and coupons. He usually does. Grab yourself a jacket, right? I can put 6 bottles of wine in mine. I have, in fact, put 6 bottles of wine.
I'm just picturing this. We need to take a photo of you with the 6 bottles of wine in this jacket.
The irony is you couldn't really tell. It handles it very well. If the K sells out, and now we're up to, a mid-level cheap bucket, I don't know, like an L or a S or a T or whatever, there could be a differential on that also. And so like a T down is also whatever the T fare is minus $20 or $40. If they go that way, it could legitimately become this is the default, and everybody has to sort of pay a little extra. I don't think they will. I don't think that's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
But, there's not a high level of confidence in my thinking that. I hope you can tell from my voice.
I think
exceptionally committed to that view.
The counterpoint, I think, to your theory, the counterpoint to the idea that they're going to have like these fares available for the entire book. I mean, maybe there's a cutoff. Like maybe they say, okay, when we hit W, we're not going to offer them any more of these basic economy fares anymore, right? But at the same time, I don't think they want to fill up half the plane with Group 5 boarding and people who don't have any bags. I just don't think and
Sure.
at a discounted rate. I don't think that's going to be.
Well,
it's
but
not gonna make
they
any money.
never wanted to do that.
Yeah.
So right, they never sold, even though they say it's not a specific number of seats on board and whatever. Right, this is the magic math of revenue management.
Yep.
It's not about, well, there's going to be 6 seats of that on every plane, and after those 6 are sold out, then you buy a normal fare. But on some routes, I can imagine that the Newark Orlando route that I flew on Monday, although I flew it on JetBlue, the price point that it was being offered at was essentially basic economy.
I could totally see this on like really like flooding the
Leisure routes.
Leisure routes.
Yeah.
I'm thinking like San Francisco, Honolulu, or even connecting traffic on those. Like this, they'll print these fares like for the entire plane because they're going 10 abreast.
Yeah.
So what do they care?
On the
Like,
777, yeah.
Yeah, shove them in the back.
Denver too, by the way, is getting that.
Denver, Houston. I mean, it's gonna suck, but it's the reality of what the fares are becoming. So I think there's a level of distaste in my mouth that it's coming, but I knew it was. I think we all knew it was coming.
Yeah, and
because
I think that no carry-on bag was a little bit of a surprise. It was
that part. Yeah, that part was surprising.
But not enough that I can like get worked up about it.
Do you think that was a Scott Kirby twist? Like, do you think that he comes in and all of a sudden now we have this announcement about
the one more thing?
Yeah, the one more thing. He's like the Steve Jobs of bad news.
And if that's the case, did American already have it on its books?
Yeah. I mean,
that'll be part of their plan when they announce.
Yeah.
That could be.
I'm throwing out ideas. I have no info, no inside info.
I could see that being something he certainly would campaign for. I think, that the goal is to match what the Spirit or Frontier experience is supposed to be.
Yep.
Because that's, in theory, the fares they're matching. Now, the numbers don't always line up, and we've seen that with Delta already, but that's the ideal of what they're trying to do.
Yeah, and see, I don't know Delta's leisure routes well enough. I was trying to find some of these fares. I think I only came across 1 or 2 of their like basic economy, which is odd that everyone's calling it the same name. Like Delta it's basic economy on Delta. It's like that's their page, and now United's calling it the same thing. Which we could get into that whole subject again.
I'd say what you want to differentiate your premium cabin, right? That's why you have Polaris and Delta One and whatever.
Yeah.
Upper class for Virgin, like all those things, Mint for JetBlue. That's why you do that. But for basic economy, I don't know that you want to differentiate it. And people shopping on pricing, you kind of don't give a shit.
Yep.
Here's the dollar amount. That's your difference. Buy it or don't. But like, stop wasting my time.
And we should note as well that we've kind of discussed this a little bit, but those fares will probably be. It's likely, we don't know for sure, but they'll probably be excluded from corporate booking engines, from what we've seen with our expenses.
That's a choice the corporate customer makes.
Yeah. Right.
It's like Concur as a booking engine absolutely can either show them or not. The company decides whether they want them to appear or not. I believe that, and we've heard Delta say, and I believe that most other companies will continue to do the same thing they do with United as they do with Delta. But Delta has said they don't do a ton of volume of these on corporate customers.
And it makes sense because like the lack of changeability on the tickets, that's another little feature, I guess, in air quotes. The lack of changeability would make these very unattractive.
This is not a $200 change fee or a $400 change fee or whatever. This is you fly these seats you bought or you don't fly. Yeah,
and I think businesses don't want to eat that cost, regardless of the savings.
Yeah, to be fair, this is a sort of thing and that sort of thing has existed in Europe, especially on low-cost carriers for a long time.
Yep.
Every now, we hear the news, makes the news every now and then. Ryanair is so evil; they didn't let me change my ticket after XYZ disaster.
Yep, but that's the fare you bought.
Yeah, and not only that, it's the fare you bought and the fare that's published and whatever. So.
Yeah, and I think they put it. I mean, Ryanair kind of makes it very obvious that you can't change this ticket.
Yeah.
On their website and stuff. So, last point about the basic economy fares, and we can just talk about it really quickly. 2 points. One, you're not going to see these fares much when there's a partner or, you're on an international ticket that has a partner connection.
I got no interlining, right?
Yeah, no interlining and no code sharing. So if you're flying to, let's say, Marseille in Europe on United, connecting in Frankfurt on Lufthansa, you probably will not see these fares if there's a code share, or even I don't think you'd see them at all because there's interlining involved there, right?
Yeah. Anything that involves a partner carrier won't have it.
So, I mean, that's good news for folks. And I don't know if that's because of the mapping of the fares, like if Lufthansa wasn't willing to map the fares over or what, but or if any of the
well, no, I think it's actually bigger than that. Is again they're trying to match Spirit and Frontier, who don't have interline partners.
Yep.
And so, if you want a ticket that includes the interline segment, you have to pay more.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
You remember when you couldn't buy round trip tickets
Mm-hmm.
because the pricing was so screwed up, or you couldn't buy multi-city tickets that priced as 3 one-ways instead of a circle trip.
Yeah. Yeah.
All that stuff was based on airlines, the legacy airlines, trying to shoehorn these types of policies into their old revenue management, inventory management, PSS solutions. And now that they sort of maybe finally have it working, the idea is that these tickets are for the point-to-point, local cities only, not even necessarily connecting traffic, although there will be some of that. And they don't want people who are connecting with partners.
Yeah. Let's make it as simple as possible. No connecting partners, and if you want that, you're going to pay a slight premium to get it.
Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense. And then my last point really is the no seat selection. We can talk about a little bit about that with kids. One, we don't really know what this is going to look like, and Delta makes it very clear on their website when you look at their basic economy fares. They tell you it is possible you will be separated from your family on these fares. Like, it's very clear. Yep. So if you're booking one of these, be aware you're not going to have the ability to go up to the gate agent and say, oh, well, my kids are with me. Can you seat us together? Like, they're not going to move people who paid a regular fare to accommodate your basic fare. It's highly unlikely, right?
Yeah.
So just be aware when you're buying the ticket. Pay the premium if you want to choose your seats. Right?
Yes.
Am I crazy? I don't know.
But that's a war on families.
Yeah. All right. Well, then don't ever fly Spirit or anyone else you can't pick a seat on. I mean, shit. Don't fly Southwest. Don't fly Southwest. Don't fly Lufthansa.
To be fair, Southwest you board relatively early, but there are no guarantees.
But don't fly Lufthansa then, because even if you're a Star Gold on Lufthansa on an inter-Europe segment, you can't pick your seats until check-in, and you don't necessarily get the seats that you want. Like it's kind of like it's gonna auto put you in a seat when you check in, and then you can change it if there's something open.
You can get it. Yeah, I mean, this will be worse than those in that some people will be able to assign in advance, whereas on many of those you can't. But like if you think about a Ryanair, where I almost always pay the $5 to pick my seat.
Yep.
Right, because that's in the total cost of the ticket, very reasonable to me, and I actually care about getting the exit row.
Yep. So
if you have half the seats assigned or 3/4 of the seats assigned already, it does make it harder. But it's no guarantees either way.
Yeah, and I mean, but this going in, and
I agree with you. I don't think it's awful. I don't think any of them are good necessarily, but the United one will be a little more complex than some of the others.
Absolutely.
That's all I'm saying.
Absolutely. Yep. I agree with that. I want to talk about air traffic control a little bit. So there was an AP story that came out about the president-elect saying that he would like to spin air traffic control operations from the government and place them under the control of a private nonprofit corporation chartered by Congress.
Yep.
This makes me want to throw up in my mouth a little bit.
We went through this a couple months ago.
Yeah.
All the major airlines except Delta support it.
What do you think?
I think it's a disaster waiting to happen. Not a planes will fall out of the sky and crash disaster, but a financial boondoggle. Actually, what I really think is I wish I had the right connections and
to start an ATC company.
Yeah, to get in on. I could just do building management.
Yeah.
Like, can I run the tower for New York TRACON? I don't know. Like, can I own that building? What's the contract? I feel like if I could get financing, that would be like minting cash.
Yep.
And on the off chance it falls through, just when the whole thing falls apart, just sell it back to the government at a profit.
Yeah, I mean that's true. I think there is some frustration that's valid. I think there is some frustration over the fact that they haven't modernized the ATC system completely,
because
and people.
Congress won't fund it.
Yeah, exactly. And so let's privatize it. That doesn't seem like the answer to me. And that's kind of where I was going, was that people are frustrated that it hasn't happened, but they're frustrated for the wrong reasons. Being frustrated it hasn't happened is different than being frustrated that it hasn't been funded. So privatizing it is not the way around it. And we can disagree politically, but privatizing ATC seems like a terrible idea to me for a number of reasons. One, does anyone think that the TSA is run well? And
No, but it's not privatized.
No, but what I'm saying is, does anyone think it's run well as a government entity? And people will tell you, no, it's not.
Okay.
So should we privatize it? Probably not. Like we saw what happened. Privatized companies were running airport security before the TSA.
Yeah, and they followed the rules just fine. I actually would say they ran fine pre-TSA.
Some would say that they were run kind of shoddily and they weren't being vetted correctly. Like they were just kind of being run. They just did their own thing.
Yeah.
Like they judged themselves. They graded themselves.
That's fair. Oversight challenges.
Yeah,
but,
oversight.
Today you've got the TSA oversight airports like San Francisco, right? There's not TSA.
Yep.
And it works just fine. You put together a set of standards and let people work to them and spot check or inspect or whatever.
Yep.
Part of that comes with you need sufficient inspector/oversight if that's what you're going to depend on. Like you can't have the self-reporting companies that you can only inspect once every 4 years.
Yeah.
And the FAA definitely has its problems on that front. In terms of insufficient inspectors.
So do you think then that by privatizing ATC, we would see it modernized immediately? Do you think the system would get better?
No.
Immediately. So
no.
then
it'd take a significant amount of time to sort of convert over and get that stuff figured out, and then the theory is like you have to generate enough cash to be able to make those investments, and if they're supposed to run at sort of a razor thin margin, just enough money to keep moving kind of budget, it's unclear where that's supposed to come from. Is that supposed to also come from Congress?
Yeah.
And one of my trying to not get too political, but I'm going to a little bit here. One of the interesting conversations I've heard a few times in the last few weeks is our airports are awful. Why hasn't the government fixed it? And the disconnect with people of what the government funds in terms of how this all works, right? The government funds air traffic control and the runways, essentially, and taxiways. They make sure that that physical infrastructure exists.
The airports are private.
The airports are private, or they're owned by local municipalities or a state or whatever, but they're not owned by the federal government.
Yep.
The only funding they can basically get is from the concessions contracts and the passenger facility charge, the PFCs, which there's a cap on because the airlines have lobbied to make sure that they can't be charged more. And I'm not saying I want to pay more than my $4.50 per departure, which is the max today, but you go to London and isn't it like £30 or something to leave Heathrow?
Yeah. If you're in the coach
Canada,
cabin.
it's like $25, but they're Canadian dollars, so I don't know what that really is. No, it's still like $15 or $20. Like they're more expensive. Now, does that make the airports nicer? Maybe. I mean, it's hard to say. That's a solution, but that's where that funding comes from. It comes from passengers.
Well, yeah, absolutely, and I think
obviously there's also airline landing fees and rents and all those other sorts of things. But the bulk of the income from to make this happen is coming from passengers paying for it. So unless the U.S. government wants to allow passengers to pay more to fund airport construction, terminal construction, it's not going to get better. We're not suddenly going to find like another couple $1 billion here and there that's going to go into building new terminals. Maybe ATC gets modernized.
Well, so that brings me, we could go into this, it's a totally different subject, but it brings me to this point about like, what's the real cost of flying to a passenger, right? Like, it's kind of this whole argument against, if you want a better terminal, someone's going to have to pay for it. And who is that? And if it's the airline, well, they're going to probably charge you more on the airfare to pay for that terminal. Or if it's the port authority or whoever's running the airport, they're probably going to have a higher fee. But at the same time, the airlines are blocking that because they don't want you to have to pay more. They don't want you to see that cost on your ticket, basically. right? They don't want you to see $12 going to the airport. So they lobby against it. So is there a disconnect between the real cost of flying and what the traveling public expects? And I think I would venture to say there's a disconnect there of what.
Yeah, I don't think you even have to venture. I think we can pretty much agree that there's a massive disconnect there.
Yeah, and what people expect and what they expect to pay and all these things. I mean, I think there's a real issue there, and I think saying that airports are dumpy and that's like the least of my infrastructure worries. Like, you know what I mean?
Well, I think it depends a little bit when you're walking, like dodging rain buckets in LaGuardia.
Yeah, no, I completely agree.
Like deciding that the carpet's a little dirty needs to be replaced at wherever.
Yeah, and I think people are using like LaGuardia as this like picture for what all U.S. airports are like. But when you look at it, let's see, San Francisco's getting a huge new terminal on one end. Portland, where I'm at, is getting a rebuilt terminal on one side of the airport. Seattle is getting a huge renovation. LaGuardia is undergoing a renovation currently. It's a cluster, but it's happening.
Sure. And it may eventually get finished. You're right. Like all these, we certainly waited too long on some of them, and the pain of fixing them is going to be enormous. But they're not all awful, and not all foreign airports are great, and not all third world airports are awful, not all whatever. It's just I got a little frustrated, and just like randomly walking behind a couple guys down the street the other day here. Heard this conversation about how airports are suddenly going to change. I was like, you just don't fucking understand.
Yeah, I think it's a non sequitur, right? The two arguments don't match up with each other, and I don't think because the airports are going to get better, that means we should privatize ATC.
Yeah, just totally not connected at all.
Yeah, and so I'm torn on the ATC thing. I see what you're saying, Seth, that there's a possibility that they would fund it really quickly and maybe get the system up running faster than the federal government would.
I don't, though. Like,
yeah, you don't.
I don't see how that's going to happen. Like, even if suddenly doing this, the money magically appeared to fund next gen. Yeah. Like, it was designed 20 years ago, so it's not really all that next gen. It's just sort of almost current gen. B, it still is going to take forever to implement, and you've got to coexist while it's happening. And C, like, I don't even know what C is going to be, but there's a third point there, I'm sure, that's very poignant and seals the deal for my argument. It'll happen. It can happen. We need, at some point, everybody has to pay for it. You can't have the airlines saying, we'll only do it if the government pays for the hardware. You can't have one airline say yes and three others say no. You can't have the FAA have the efforts defunded all the time because whatever reason.
Yeah, because of politics.
Yeah.
Just basic politics, I agree with you. And I think it's a discussion that people should be having with each other. Like,
if you're a listener and you think privatizing ATC is a good idea and want to debate it with us, I would love someone who has a coherent argument on the other side to come and talk.
Yeah, especially if you're like a pilot or something and you think this is a good idea. I would love to hear it. Like I would listen to a regular listener's opinion too, and we can debate it. But a pilot or someone who works in ATC,
we can keep you anonymous. We'll protect
we can
identity.
keep you anonymous. You can just send us a note. We'd love to hear from you.
Or not. We'll sell you out too. Whatever you want.
Well, I think that's pretty much the show, Seth. What do you think?
I think it probably is.
Yeah. Well, are we releasing this before Thanksgiving? We are, aren't we? No? After? Well, happy Thanksgiving after the fact. Hope you got plenty of turkey and pumpkin pie and got to see your families. We'll, again, link to the charity work and the kind of the welcome home gift thing in the show notes. And yeah, so you can find us on Twitter at @DotsLines. You can find us online at moredotsmorelines.com. Thanks for listening, and talk to you next time. Bye-bye.